The Nevada desert shimmered under the punishing midday sun as Lieutenant Commander Alexandra, Alex, Reeves pulled her government-issued SUV up to the security checkpoint. Dust swirled around the vehicle as she rolled down her window, presenting her credentials to the stone-faced Marine Guard. "Dr. Reeves for Admiral Henderson," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. She had made this drive from San Diego to the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility more times than she could count, but today was different. The guard scrutinized her ID, then her face, comparing them with something on his clipboard. "You're cleared through, ma'am. Follow the road to Building C, they're expecting you." Alex nodded her thanks and drove through the gate. At 43, with streaks of silver threading through her dark hair, she had spent 20 years in the Navy, 15 of those as a ballistics expert specializing in extreme environmental shooting conditions. She had earned her doctorate while serving, publishing papers that changed how the military understood the physics of precision shooting. But none of that would matter today if she couldn't solve the problem that had brought her to this remote facility on short notice. 3 days ago, she had received an urgent call from Admiral Henderson, her former commanding officer and mentor. The Navy SEAL sniper teams had been experiencing unprecedented failure rates during their desert qualification training. Shots that should have been routine for operators of their caliber were consistently missing targets. Equipment had been checked and rechecked. The men were frustrated, commanders were concerned, and an upcoming deployment timeline was in jeopardy. "We need your eyes on this, Alex," Henderson had said. "Something's not adding up." She parked outside Building C, a nondescript concrete structure that housed the command offices. Grabbing her laptop bag and a hard case containing her specialized equipment, she stepped out into the heat. The thermometer on her SUV read 105 degrees F, hot even for Nevada in August. Inside the air-conditioned building, a young petty officer led her to a conference room where 5 men waited around a table covered with maps, charts, and ballistic calculation sheets. Admiral Henderson stood as she entered, his weathered face breaking into a brief smile. "Dr. Reeves, thank you for coming quickly," he said, extending his hand. "Of course, Admiral." She shook his hand firmly, then turned to the others. Henderson made the introductions. "This is Commander Wilson, co of the training facility, Master Chief Petty Officer Garrett, head of sniper instruction, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, meteorological specialist, and Captain Brooks, representing SOCOM, who's overseeing this training cycle." Alex nodded to each man in turn, noting the varying degrees of welcome in their expressions. Wilson and Garrett seemed openly skeptical. Rodriguez looked curious. Brooks was unreadable. "Gentlemen," she said, "Admiral Henderson briefed me on the general situation, but I'd appreciate hearing the specifics directly from you." Master Chief Garrett spoke first, his voice gravelly from years of shouting over gunfire and helicopter noise. "3 weeks ago, our qualification scores started dropping. Dramatically. These are our top snipers, men with multiple combat deployments and proven records. Suddenly, they're missing shots at ranges they could hit in their sleep." He pushed a folder toward her. "We've checked and replaced all equipment, tested different ammunition lots, brought in wind specialists. Nothing's fixed it." Alex opened the folder, scanning the data. "What's the primary qualification distance where you're seeing problems?" 1,000 to 1,500 meters, Garrett replied. "Particularly bad between 1,300 and 1,600 hours." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Afternoon hours when the heat is at its peak." "Precisely." This from Rodriguez, who leaned forward with interest. "We've recorded standard meteorological data, temperature, humidity, wind speed and direction, barometric pressure. Everything falls within parameters our snipers should be able to compensate for easily." Captain Brooks, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Dr. Reeves, I'll be frank. We have a team deploying in 3 weeks. If they can't qualify, that creates significant operational problems. Admiral Henderson says you're the best at solving these kinds of ballistic anomalies. We need this fixed yesterday." Alex met his gaze steadily. "I understand, Captain. I'll need to observe the snipers in action, review your environmental data, and take some measurements of my own." Commander Wilson cleared his throat. "With all due respect, Dr. Reeves, what exactly do you think you'll find that our specialists haven't? These men have decades of combined experience." There it was, the skepticism she had been expecting. Alex had encountered it throughout her career, especially from those who saw her academic credentials before her military ones. "Commander," she replied evenly, "sometimes it takes fresh eyes to see what's been overlooked. I've studied ballistic anomalies in extreme environments for 15 years. I've seen phenomena in the field that don't appear in any manual." Admiral Henderson intervened before Wilson could respond. "Dr. Reeves literally wrote the current manual on environmental ballistics for naval special warfare. She's here at my request because I've seen her solve problems like this before." Wilson nodded stiffly, properly chastised. "Of course, Admiral, we appreciate any assistance Dr. Reeves can provide." "When's the next qualification attempt scheduled?" Alex asked, turning back to Garrett. "Tomorrow morning, 800. We have 8 snipers attempting qualification." Alex nodded. "I'd like to review your environmental data tonight and set up my equipment before dawn. I'll need full access to the range and permission to place sensors at various locations." "You'll have whatever you need," Admiral Henderson assured her. "Commander Wilson will ensure it." As the meeting concluded, Alex remained behind with Henderson while the others filed out. Once they were alone, he turned to her with a more familiar expression. "Thank you for coming, Alex. I know you're supposed to be on leave." She shrugged. "My hiking trip can wait. This sounds more interesting anyway." Henderson chuckled, then grew serious. "Wilson and Garrett are good men, but they're traditional in their thinking, and they're under enormous pressure from above." "I've dealt with skepticism before," Alex replied. "Results are what matter in the end." "Just like old times," Henderson mused. "Remember Kabul, when the Army snipers couldn't figure out why their shots were going wild at dawn?" Alex smiled at the memory. "Temperature inversion layers that their instruments weren't detecting. Took me 3 days to convince their commander it wasn't operator error." "And now you're the Navy's go-to expert." Henderson placed a hand on her shoulder. "Find what's happening here, Alex. These men need to deploy with confidence." After Henderson left, Alex spread the data sheets across the table and began her analysis. The qualification results showed a clear pattern: consistent accuracy in the morning hours, deteriorating dramatically after noon, with the worst performance between 1400 and 1500 hours. Environmental data looked standard for desert conditions: high temperatures, low humidity, moderate winds. But something wasn't adding up. SEALs of this caliber didn't suddenly forget how to shoot. Equipment failures had been ruled out. There had to be an environmental factor they weren't measuring or accounting for, something invisible to standard instruments but significant enough to throw off shots at long range. As the sun set outside the windows, casting long shadows across the desert, Alex formulated a theory. Tomorrow would tell if she was right. Alex arrived at the range before sunrise, the desert air still carrying the night's chill. Stars faded above as the eastern sky lightened to a pale blue. She had slept little, her mind working through calculations and possibilities. She unloaded equipment from her SUV: specialized thermal sensors, a laptop with custom software, and a device she had developed during her doctoral research: an atmospheric density gradient analyzer that could detect variations invisible to standard meteorological instruments. Master Chief Garrett arrived as she was setting up her final sensor station, coffee in hand and curiosity evident in his expression. "Morning, Dr. Reeves. You're up early." "Needed to get readings before the sun affects the terrain," she explained, calibrating a sensor. "And please call me Alex. We're going to be working closely today." Garrett nodded, watching her work. "Mind telling me what these do?" He gestured to the array of unusual devices she had positioned. "This one measures minute temperature differences at various elevations from ground level up to 10 feet, she explained. "This one tracks thermal radiation from the ground. And this," she patted the density analyzer, "measures something most people don't even realize exists: microdensity layers in the air." "Microdensity layers?" Garrett sounded skeptical but interested. "Think of the air like an ocean," Alex explained. "It has currents, layers of different temperatures and densities. Standard instruments measure the general conditions, but they miss the fine details, the layers a bullet actually passes through on its way to the target." Before Garrett could respond, vehicles began arriving. The SEAL snipers emerged, gear in hand, their faces showing a mixture of determination and frustration. Alex recognized the look: proud professionals confounded by unexplained failure. Commander Wilson arrived with Captain Brooks, both watching with undisguised curiosity as Alex made final adjustments to her equipment. "Dr. Reeves," Wilson called, "the qualification will begin in 30 minutes. Will your devices be ready?" "They're ready now," she replied. "I'll be monitoring data throughout the day, but I don't want to interfere with your normal procedures. I'll observe from here." She indicated her position near the command station. Wilson nodded. "Appreciate that. These men need to focus without distractions." As the snipers set up their positions, Alex introduced herself to Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, who would be providing standard meteorological readings throughout the qualification. "I've read your papers on density gradient effects," he told her, genuine respect in his voice. "Your work on mountain wind patterns changed how we calculate long-range shots in Afghanistan." "Thank you," Alex said, surprised and pleased. "Not everyone appreciates the more theoretical aspects of ballistics." Rodriguez glanced toward Wilson and Brooks. "Some people only believe what they can see. Until then, it's all academic." He paused. "Any preliminary thoughts on what's happening here?" "Several theories," Alex replied cautiously. "But I need to see the pattern develop throughout the day before I can be certain." The qualification began precisely at 800. Alex watched through binoculars as the first sniper team took their position. From 800 meters, the sniper placed 5 consecutive shots in a tight group near the center of the target, exactly what you'd expect from operators of this caliber. The teams rotated through progressively more difficult shots: 1,000 meters, 1,200 meters, 1,400 meters. Throughout the morning, their performance was exemplary. Alex recorded data from her sensors, building a baseline for comparison when conditions changed. By noon, with the sun high overhead and the temperature climbing past 100 degrees F, the qualification continued. The teams began their second rotation at 1,000 meters, and Alex noticed a subtle change. The shots were still hitting the targets, but the groups were slightly wider, less centered. "They're starting to compensate," Garrett explained, noticing her interest. "Adjusting based on their morning experience." Alex nodded but said nothing, watching her instruments. The data was beginning to show what she had suspected, something invisible to the naked eye but increasingly significant as the heat built. At 13:30, the first clear miss occurred. A sniper who had placed perfect shots all morning sent a round just outside the target zone at 1,400 meters. His spotter called an adjustment, but the next shot missed by an even wider margin. "What the hell?" the sniper muttered, loud enough for Alex to hear. "Same wind, same distance as this morning." By 14:30, the pattern was unmistakable. Even shots at 1,000 meters were becoming problematic. The snipers adjusted their calculations repeatedly, but the inconsistency grew worse. The frustration was palpable. "This is exactly what's been happening," Garrett said to Alex, his voice tight with concern. "These men can shoot, Doctor. Something else is wrong." Alex checked her instruments, confirmation of her theory building with each new data point. "Master Chief, I think I know what's happening, but I need another hour of observations to be certain." At 1500, with the qualification effectively stalled as miss after miss was recorded, Commander Wilson approached Alex's station. "Dr. Reeves, we're burning daylight and morale here. If you've got insights, now would be the time." Alex looked up from her laptop. "Commander, I believe I can explain what's happening, and more importantly, how to compensate for it." Wilson glanced at Captain Brooks, who had joined them, then back to Alex. "We're listening." "I need to show you something first," Alex said, gesturing toward her thermal imaging equipment. "Look at this display." The two officers leaned in to see the screen, which showed a multicolored representation of the air above the desert floor, extending out toward the target area. "What exactly are we looking at?" Brooks asked. "Thermal density layers," Alex explained. "As the ground heats throughout the day, it creates distinct layers of air with different temperatures and densities. Standard meteorological instruments measure average conditions, but they miss these microlayers." She pointed to bands of color on the display. "These aren't just temperature differences, they're effectively different atmospheric conditions that a bullet must pass through. When a shot crosses these boundaries, it experiences subtle but significant deflection. Like light bending when it passes from air into water," Rodriguez suggested, joining the conversation. "Exactly," Alex confirmed. but much more subtle and complex because there are multiple layers with different properties. Wilson frowned. If this is a known physics principle, why isn't it accounted for in standard ballistic calculations? Because in most environments, the effect is negligible, Alex explained. But this particular valley, with its surrounding mountains and soil composition, creates unusually distinct thermal layers during peak heating hours. I've only seen this phenomenon this pronounced twice before, once in Afghanistan and once in a similar basin in Arizona. Brooks studied the display intently. So how do we compensate? Alex pulled up a chart on her laptop. I've been recording the effect on shots throughout the day and correlating it with my sensor data. The deflection follows a predictable pattern based on time of day and distance to target. She handed them printouts of a calculation table she had prepared. This adjustment formula accounts for the thermal layers. The correction varies by distance and time of day, but this chart provides the offset values needed. Wilson examined the chart skeptically. And you're confident this will work? There's only one way to find out, Alex replied. Let your snipers try it. After a brief consultation with Admiral Henderson, who had arrived to observe the afternoon session, Wilson agreed to test Alex's solution. Alex approached the first sniper team, explaining her findings and the adjustment formula. The sniper, a veteran chief petty officer with 3 combat deployments, looked dubious but willing to try anything. So I add this value to my windage based on the time and distance, he confirmed, studying the chart. Exactly, Alex said. The thermal layers are creating consistent deflection that increases with distance. This adjustment counteracts that effect. The sniper made the calculations, adjusted his scope, and settled into position for a 1,400-meter shot. The range fell silent as he controlled his breathing, then squeezed the trigger. Through her binoculars, Alex saw the impact, center mass. Hit, called the spotter, surprise evident in his voice. The sniper fired again, applying the same adjustment. Another hit, inches from the first. A ripple of interest moved through the assembled SEALs. The next team quickly applied Alex's formula to their calculations and achieved similar results, consistent hits where minutes before they had been missing. Within an hour, all 8 sniper teams had tested the adjustment formula across multiple distances. The transformation was remarkable. Shots that had been missing wildly were now striking with precision, the consistency returning to their performance. Captain Brooks approached Alex as the qualification resumed in earnest. Dr. Reeves, I owe you an apology for my skepticism. This is impressive. No apology necessary, Captain, she replied. Skepticism is healthy in our line of work. Results are what matter. As the afternoon progressed, the qualification scores steadily improved. The snipers, once they understood the science behind the phenomenon, quickly integrated the new adjustments into their calculations. By sunset, as equipment was being packed away and results tabulated, Admiral Henderson found Alex at her sensor station. Well done, he said simply. You've saved these men a lot of frustration and potentially given them an edge in the field. Alex nodded, satisfaction warming her more than the praise. The effect is predictable once you know it exists. I'll document everything so they can incorporate it into their training program. I'd like you to do more than document it, Henderson said. I want you to develop a formal training module and personally instruct the sniper instructors. This knowledge needs to be institutionalized. As the desert cooled under the approaching night, Alex watched the SEAL teams loading their gear, their earlier frustration replaced by the quiet confidence of men who once again trusted their skills and their calculations. She had broken through not just a ballistic mystery, but the barrier of skepticism that often met her work. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, formalizing her findings, creating training materials, convincing more traditional instructors to adopt her methods. But for tonight, she could enjoy the satisfaction of a problem solved and professionals helped. Sometimes the most important targets weren't downrange, but in changing how people understood the invisible forces affecting their world. The following morning, Alex arrived at the command center to find it transformed. The conference room now contained a projector, additional seating, and a sense of anticipation. Word of yesterday's breakthrough had spread quickly through the facility. Admiral Henderson greeted her at the door. Hope you're ready for an audience. We've got sniper instructors from 3 different units coming in for your briefing." Alex raised an eyebrow. That was fast. "News travels quickly when you solve a problem that's been plaguing elite units," Henderson replied with a small smile. "Captain Brooks made some calls last night. Apparently, other training facilities have been experiencing similar issues." As Alex set up her presentation, the room began to fill. In addition to the familiar faces from yesterday, at least a dozen new officers and senior enlisted instructors filed in, their expressions ranging from curiosity to lingering skepticism. Commander Wilson entered last, accompanied by a tall, stern-looking man with silver hair and the insignia of a Marine Corps colonel. "Dr. Reeves," Wilson said, "this is Colonel Hargrove, commanding officer of the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School. He flew in this morning specifically to hear your findings." Alex shook the colonel's hand, nodding his firm grip and evaluating gaze. "Colonel, welcome. I wasn't expecting representatives from the Marines. When I heard that Navy SEALs were having trouble shooting straight, and that someone had figured out why, I decided it warranted my personal attention," Hargrove replied, his tone making it unclear whether he was joking or not. As the room settled, Admiral Henderson called for attention. "Gentlemen, yesterday Dr. Alexandra Reeves identified the cause of the shooting anomalies that have been affecting our qualification scores. More importantly, she developed a practical solution that restored our snipers' accuracy immediately. I've asked her to present her findings and methodology to you all." Henderson nodded to Alex, who took her place at the front of the room. She had given countless technical briefings throughout her career, but rarely to an audience with this much combined combat experience and expertise. These were not academics or bureaucrats. They were warriors who depended on precision for survival. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "Yesterday, we confirmed that the shooting difficulties experienced by SEAL snipers at this facility are caused by a phenomenon known as thermal density stratification. Specifically, an extreme version of it unique to certain geographical formations." She displayed the first thermal imaging slide on the screen. "Most of you are familiar with mirage effects, the visual distortion caused by heat waves that can affect your ability to see targets clearly. What you may not know is that those same heat conditions can create distinct layers of air with different densities that actually deflect bullets in flight." For the next 40 minutes, Alex explained the science behind the phenomenon, showing thermal images, trajectory models, and data from her sensors. She detailed how the specific topography of the training area, a basin surrounded by mountains, created ideal conditions for extreme thermal layering during peak heating hours. "The critical insight," she emphasized, "is that this isn't random. The deflection follows predictable patterns based on time of day, distance to target, and specific location. Once we understand those patterns, we can calculate precise adjustments." She displayed the adjustment formula and tables she had developed. These values allowed the SEAL snipers to immediately restore their accuracy yesterday, even during the worst conditions at peak heating hours. Throughout her presentation, Alex noticed Colonel Hargrove taking detailed notes, his expression growing increasingly thoughtful. When she opened the floor for questions, his hand was the first to rise. "Dr. Reeves, we've experienced similar issues at our desert training facility in 29 Palms, but none of our ballistics experts identified this cause. What made you look for thermal layering specifically?" "I encountered a similar phenomenon during my doctoral research," Alex explained. "I was studying atmospheric effects on ballistics in the mountains of Afghanistan. We discovered that certain valley configurations create these extreme thermal layers. Once I saw the pattern in the qualification data here, accuracy deteriorating predictably in the afternoon hours, I suspected the same effect might be present." Hargrove nodded slowly. "And your adjustment formula, can it be applied to any location, or does it require calibration to specific terrain?" "The basic principle applies broadly," Alex replied, "but the exact adjustment values need to be calculated for each location. The good news is that once properly mapped, the pattern remains consistent for that location, assuming similar weather conditions." More questions followed, increasingly technical as the assembled experts engaged with the material. Alex fielded each one confidently, occasionally referencing her research data or demonstrating concepts with the thermal imaging equipment. As the formal briefing concluded, small groups formed around the room, instructors discussing applications for their specific units and training environments. Alex found herself surrounded by senior snipers, each with questions about implementing her methodology. Eventually, Admiral Henderson called for attention again. "Gentlemen, Dr. Reeves has agreed to develop a comprehensive training module on thermal density effects for all Special Operations Sniper programs. In the meantime, she'll be available to consult with your units individually if you're experiencing similar issues." The announcement generated approving nods around the room. As the briefing broke up, Colonel Hargrove approached Alex again. "Dr. Reeves, I'd like to extend a formal invitation for you to visit our facility at 29 Palms. If you could apply your methodology there, it would be invaluable for our sniper training program." "I'd be happy to, Colonel," Alex replied. "We should coordinate schedules." "Excellent, my aide will contact you." He paused, then added with a hint of grudging admiration, "The Marines aren't generally in the habit of taking shooting advice from Navy personnel, but in this case, I believe we can make an exception." As Hargrove departed, Captain Brooks approached with Commander Wilson. "Dr. Reeves, SOCOM is very interested in your findings," Brooks said. "There are operational implications beyond training. Special operations teams deploy to environments all over the world, many with similar thermal characteristics to what you've documented here." Wilson nodded, his earlier skepticism completely replaced by professional respect. "We'd like you to brief the SEAL team commanders directly. They're planning missions where this knowledge could be crucial." "Of course," Alex agreed. "When did you have in mind?" "This afternoon, if possible," Brooks replied. "They're eager to incorporate your insights into their pre-deployment preparations." After the morning's activities concluded, Alex found herself alone with Admiral Henderson in the conference room, gathering her materials. "Quite a change from yesterday," Henderson observed. "You've got Marine colonels and SEAL commanders hanging on your every word now." Alex smiled wryly. "Amazing what a little success can do for one's credibility." "It's more than that," Henderson said seriously. "You've given these men something they desperately needed, an explanation for a problem that was undermining their confidence, and a solution they can apply immediately." He helped her pack her equipment. "You know, when I recommended you for this, there was some resistance. Not everyone was comfortable bringing in a civilian consultant, even one with your military background." "And a woman at that," Alex added with a knowing look. Henderson didn't deny it. "That was certainly an unspoken factor for some, which makes your success all the more satisfying to witness." Alex closed her equipment case. "The science doesn't care about gender, Admiral. Neither does a bullet in flight. All that matters is understanding the physics and applying it correctly." "Well said," Henderson agreed. "Though I must admit, watching Colonel Hargrove take notes from you like an eager student was a highlight of my week." Before Alex could respond, Master Chief Garrett appeared at the door. "Dr. Reeves, the snipers would like to speak with you if you have a moment." Curious, Alex followed Garrett to the range where the SEAL snipers were preparing for another practice session. They paused as she approached, and the senior chief stepped forward. "Dr. Reeves, we wanted to thank you properly," he said. "Yesterday was, well, it was a breakthrough for us. We've been battling this problem for weeks, questioning our equipment, our calculations, even our abilities." The other snipers nodded in agreement. "Your solution didn't just fix our shooting problem," he continued. "It restored our confidence. For operators like us, that's invaluable." "I was just doing my job," Alex replied, genuinely touched by the gesture. "You would have figured it out eventually." "Maybe," the chief said with a slight smile. "But not before our deployment. Time matters in our world." Another sniper stepped forward, holding something in his hand. "We wanted you to have this." He presented her with a SEAL Team Challenge coin, a special token traditionally exchanged in recognition of excellence and respect. One side bore the SEAL Trident, the other, the team's insignia. "We don't give these to many outsiders," the sniper explained. "Consider it honorary membership in our community of precision shooters." Alex accepted the coin, understanding its significance in military culture. "Thank you, this means a lot." As she rejoined Admiral Henderson, who had watched the exchange from a distance, he smiled knowingly. "That's quite an honor. Those men don't express gratitude easily." "It's a good reminder of why I do this work," Alex replied, examining the coin. Behind all the physics and formulas, there are people whose lives depend on getting it right. As they walked toward the command center for the afternoon briefing with the SEAL team commanders, Henderson glanced sideways at her. "You know, there's going to be considerable demand for your expertise after this. The word is already spreading through special operations communities." Alex nodded thoughtfully. "I'm starting to realize that. This phenomenon probably affects snipers in similar environments worldwide, but without the right instruments and methodology, it's nearly impossible to identify." "Which makes you uniquely valuable," Henderson pointed out. "Have you considered taking a more formal role with naval special warfare? There's likely to be funding available for a dedicated research position after this success." The suggestion caught Alex by surprise. She had built her career balancing military service with academic research, maintaining a certain independence that allowed her to pursue various projects. A dedicated position with NSW would mean focusing more narrowly on operational applications. "I hadn't considered it," she admitted. "It would be a significant change in direction." "Just something to think about," Henderson said. "After today's demonstration, you'll have no shortage of options." As they approached the command center, Alex could see several new vehicles parked outside, black Suburbans with government plates that typically transported high-ranking officers. The SEAL team commanders had arrived, drawn by reports of a solution to a problem affecting their snipers' effectiveness. "Ready to impress some more commanders?" Henderson asked as they reached the door. Alex straightened her shoulders, the challenge coin a comfortable weight in her pocket. "Let's see if we can make them freeze again." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Nevada desert as Alex observed the SEAL sniper teams applying her methodology in a practical exercise. After briefing the team commanders, who had indeed been visibly impressed by her analysis and solution, she had agreed to oversee a live-fire demonstration to validate the adjustment formulas under current conditions. 8 sniper teams were arrayed across the firing line, engaging targets from 800 to 2,000 meters. It was the worst time of day for thermal effects, 1,500 hours, with the temperature hovering near 110 degrees F, precisely when their accuracy had been most compromised previously. Alex monitored her instruments while moving between shooting positions, checking calculations and answering questions. The difference from 2 days ago was remarkable. Where frustration and failure had dominated, now there was focused confidence and consistent success. Admiral Henderson stood with the assembled commanders, watching through spotting scopes as the snipers engaged the farthest targets. Even at 2,000 meters, well beyond standard qualification distances, the teams were achieving hit rates above 80%. "Remarkable improvement," commented one of the SEAL commanders, a captain with multiple combat tour evident in the ribbons on his chest. "Yesterday, these same men couldn't hit reliably at 1,500 meters." Henderson nodded. "Dr. Reeves has given them the tools to understand and compensate for something that was previously invisible to them. And potentially to our adversaries as well," the captain noted. "That's a significant tactical advantage if we can exploit it operationally." As the exercise concluded, Alex joined the group of officers. The results spoke for themselves. Every sniper team had demonstrated dramatically improved accuracy using her adjustment methodology. "Gentlemen," Henderson addressed the assembled commanders, "you've seen the effectiveness of Dr. Reeves's approach firsthand. I believe we need to implement this training across all special operations sniper programs immediately." There were murmurs of agreement around the circle. "Dr. Reeves," one commander asked, "how quickly can you develop a standardized training package that we can distribute to our units?" "I can have preliminary materials ready within a week," Alex replied. "But to properly implement this, your sniper instructors will need hands-on training with the specialized equipment. The principles are straightforward, but the application requires practice." "Whatever resources you need are available," the commander assured her. "This is clearly a game-changer for our precision shooting capabilities." As the group moved toward the command center for a final debrief, Alex found herself walking alongside Captain Brooks from SOCOM. "You've made quite an impression," Brooks commented. 2 days ago, some of these men were skeptical about bringing in an outside consultant. Now they're ready to rebuild their sniper programs around your methodology." "The evidence is hard to argue with," Alex replied. Though I should point out that this isn't replacing existing training, it's enhancing it. The fundamental skills your snipers already possess are still the foundation. This just gives them additional tools for specific environmental challenges. Brooks nodded appreciatively. Well said. No one likes being told they've been doing it wrong all along. They haven't been, Alex emphasized. They've been following best practices based on the information available. Science evolves, our understanding deepens. That's progress, not failure. You're diplomatic as well as brilliant, Brooks observed with a slight smile. No wonder Admiral Henderson speaks so highly of you. Inside the command center, the final debrief began with a review of the day's results. The improvement was undeniable. Qualification scores had returned to expected levels, with many snipers exceeding their previous best performances now that they understood how to compensate for the thermal effects. Dr. Reeves, Admiral Henderson said, would you outline the next steps for implementing your methodology more broadly? Alex stood, addressing the room of senior officers. I recommend a three-phase approach. First, we document today's results and formalize the adjustment methodology for this specific training environment. Second, we develop a standardized protocol for mapping thermal density patterns in different environments. Finally, we create a comprehensive training program for sniper instructors, including the use of specialized detection equipment. She displayed a timeline on the projector. With proper support, we could have the first phase completed within 2 weeks and full implementation within 3 months. That's faster than I expected, one of the commanders commented. The core science is already established, Alex explained. What we're doing now is applying it to specific operational contexts, and frankly, your snipers are quick studies. They've already grasped the fundamental principles after just 1 day of practical application. The meeting continued with discussion of logistics, funding, and personnel assignments. By the end, a clear implementation plan had emerged, with Alex as the technical lead for developing the training program. As the commanders departed, Henderson approached Alex with Captain Brooks and Commander Wilson. Dr. Reeves, Brooks said formally, SOCOM would like to offer you a position as special technical advisor to our sniper programs. This would be a dedicated role focusing on environmental ballistics across all our training facilities worldwide. Alex blinked in surprise. That's a significant offer, Captain. One that's well-deserved, Wilson added. What you've accomplished here in 2 days would have taken our traditional approach months if we'd solved it at all. I'll need some time to consider it, Alex replied honestly. My current research commitments can be incorporated into this role, Brooks assured her. We're not asking you to abandon your scientific work. In fact, we want to support it. This position would include funding for continued research with the added benefit of immediate practical application. Henderson watched with quiet satisfaction as Alex processed the offer. Think about it, Alex. This is an opportunity to bridge the gap between theoretical ballistics and operational application on a scale few scientists ever experience. Later that evening, as the desert cooled under a spectacular sunset, Alex found herself alone on the observation platform overlooking the range. The day's activities had concluded, but her mind was still processing everything that had happened since her arrival just 2 days ago. Footsteps on the metal stairs announced someone's approach. Alex turned to see Master Chief Garrett joining her at the railing. Quite a view, he commented, looking out across the desert landscape painted in shades of orange and purple. It is, Alex agreed, beautiful and deadly at the same time. Garrett nodded, much like what we do. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the sun sink lower toward the horizon. I owe you an apology, Dr. Reeves, Garrett finally said. When you first arrived, I had my doubts, thought you were just another academic with theories that wouldn't hold up in the real world. That's a reasonable assumption based on past experience, Alex replied without offense. The gap between theoretical and practical knowledge can be wide. But not with you, Garrett observed. You bridge that gap better than anyone I've seen. You understand the science, but you also understand the practical reality of what we do. He turned to face her directly. The men were talking after you left, about how you explained things in ways that made sense to them. No condescension, no unnecessary complexity, just clear, actionable information. That's the highest compliment you could give me, Alex said sincerely. At the end of the day, all the theory in the world doesn't matter if it can't be applied effectively in the field. Garrett gestured toward the range. You've changed how we'll operate in environments like this, not just here but wherever we deploy. That's a legacy that matters. As darkness began to fall in earnest, they made their way back to the command center. The facility was quieter now, most personnel having departed for the day. In the conference room, Alex found Admiral Henderson reviewing the final reports. "There you are," he said, looking up from his paperwork. "I was about to come find you. We've received preliminary feedback from the team commanders. They're unanimously supportive of implementing your methodology across all their sniper elements." Alex nodded, taking a seat across from him. "That's good to hear." Henderson studied her expression. "You seem thoughtful, having doubts about the SOCOM offer." "Not doubts exactly," Alex replied. "Just considering the implications. I've spent most of my career moving between academic research and military application. This would shift the balance significantly toward the operational side." "Is that a bad thing?" Henderson asked. Alex considered the question carefully. "It's a different thing. My research has always been guided by curiosity, following questions wherever they led, even when the immediate applications weren't obvious. And you're concerned that focusing on special operations needs might constrain that freedom." "Possibly," she acknowledged, "though the practical impact would be greater." Henderson leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "You know, Alex, I've known you for 15 years now, since you were a young lieutenant with ideas that seemed revolutionary at the time." She smiled at the memory, "most of which you supported even when others didn't." "Because I recognized then what everyone in this building has seen over the past 2 days. You have a rare gift for bridging worlds that typically remain separate. The theoretical and the practical, the academic and the operational." He gestured toward the window, beyond which lay the range where her methodology had transformed the sniper's performance. What happened out there wasn't just about solving a ballistic problem. It was about communication across different cultures, different ways of understanding the world. Alex nodded slowly, recognizing the truth in his words. "Whatever you decide about the SOCOM position," Henderson continued, "don't underestimate the value of what you've already accomplished. You didn't just help those snipers hit their targets, you changed how they understand their environment. That knowledge will spread, become part of the culture, save lives in ways we may never fully measure." As their conversation concluded, Alex gathered her belongings, preparing to return to her temporary quarters. The decision about SOCOM's offer could wait for morning. Tonight, she wanted to reflect on the journey of the past few days, from skepticism to acceptance, from problem to solution, from outsider to respected advisor. Walking across the darkened compound, Alex paused to look up at the night sky. The desert stars shone with remarkable clarity, uncountable points of light against the infinite blackness. In her pocket, she felt the weight of the SEAL Challenge coin they had given her, a tangible symbol of acceptance into a community that rarely welcomed outsiders. 2 days ago, she had arrived at this facility to find frustrated snipers who couldn't hit their targets and skeptical commanders who doubted an academic could help. Now those same snipers were executing shots with renewed confidence, and those commanders were offering her a position that would shape the future of military marksmanship. The transformation hadn't come from imposing her knowledge, but from creating understanding, helping skilled professionals see what had been invisible to them, then giving them the tools to address it themselves. That was the true value of her work, whether she continued as an independent researcher or accepted SOCOM's offer. As Alex resumed her walk, she felt a sense of satisfaction deeper than any academic recognition had ever provided. Her complex formulas and specialized equipment had translated into immediate, tangible results, targets hit, confidence restored, capabilities enhanced. And in that translation, she had found not just professional validation but personal fulfillment. U.S. SEAL snipers couldn't hit the target until she stepped in and made the commanders freeze with the elegance and effectiveness of her solution. Whatever came next, that accomplishment would remain. In the quiet Nevada night, surrounded by the vastness of the desert and the legacy of her contribution, Dr. Alexandra Reeves continued forward, one step at a time, bridging worlds with every move.